there, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as Ledev, and spoiler season has officially started for the Guilds of Ravnica, so we're going to go over the cards that have been shown off today thanks to the daily EMTG articles talking about the mechanics from the set, which we already known about thanks to the path spoilers, but we're just going to look over some cards, and actually they did reveal one new returning mechanic that's actually pretty exciting to look back at. But for now, let's actually look at the cards. The first card that they revealed is Unexplained Disappearance, which is one in a blue, instant, return target creature to its owner's hand, Serviere 1. And as we mentioned before, Serviere essentially means that what you do is, it's like Scry, but instead of putting the card that you scry on the bottom like you would do with Scry Serviere, you put it in the graveyard. Overall, this card's pretty good. It's a good bounce spell. We like our bounce. Sure, it's not like a dispel or anything where you can't like bounce a non-land permanent, which is kind of but bouncing a creature is just fine, and mostly that's what bounce spells are used for in general. It's a good card. It'll see a lot of draft play. It'll probably see some either sideboard to main board standard play. I still have to think a little bit more on it. The fact is, if there is a way to make a tempo style Serviere deck, which I think there are possibilities to do that, I think this card will see a lot of play. But it's also just a really good draft card. Next is Deadly Visit. 3 and 2 black, sorcery spell. Destroy target creature, Serviere 2. So as we mentioned before, Serviere can be multiple numbers. It can be 1, and now this is the first one where we see where the Serviere is 2. Overall, great draft card. This card just essentially... Unconditional removal is always great in draft, and this one does a lot of benefits. It does the benefit of being able to destroy the creature, and the Serviere scrying 2, essentially, is not bad. And if you have any graveyard synergies whatsoever within your draft deck archetype, Serviere benefits off that, so... Overall, this one's just an easy one. It's unconditional removal with a beneficial scry effect. Good card. Next one is Sonic Assault, which is 1 in Izzet, red and blue, instant spell, tap target creature. Sonic Assault deals 2 damage to that creature's controller, Jumpstart. Which, of course, as we mentioned before with Jumpstart, it is, you may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding the card, in addition to paying its other cost, then exile this card. And I do kind of love the flavor text here, where it's, his head, he heard stars and saw thunder, kind of like how someone would be dazed after this type of assault. So, overall flavor of it is pretty good. Overall, this is probably one of my favorite Jumpstart cards that we've seen so far. It's just a great tempo spell, tapping the creature that's problematic, and then just being able to deal minimal damage to target creature's controller. That's not bad. That's actually really good. It might even see some Pauper play kind of good. I don't think it's amazing in Pauper, but it's not bad, because you essentially, for 1 card, you'll be able to cast a spell twice. So, 6 mana and discard a card to tap 2 target creatures on different turns and deal 4 damage to the opponent. I mean, it's not, like, amazing, but it's not bad, especially since what the benefit you get from Jumpstart is something that people are noticing with the instant thing. You get the timing, and the thing is, most people like to read cards in hands to determine whether or not you have an instant spell or not. People now have to keep in mind that the cards in the graveyard can be cast thanks to Jumpstart, and as long as you have a card in hand, they have to keep this in mind, and if they don't, then it will be a serious disadvantage to them. And I think that mental mind games itself with Jumpstart, as long as the Jumpstart spells are good, is actually pretty cool. And I think this is one of the better Jumpstart cards we've seen. Next is the Moonmark Painter. 2 and 2 black for a creature, human shaman. It's a 2/3 with Undergrowth. When Moonmark Painter enters the battlefield, target creature gains menace and gets +S+0 until in turn, where S is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Overall, this is just a fine draft card. I mean, just giving a creature menace, even without the stat boost, is fine. There's some creatures you might actually want to just give it menace and just go in for lethal and such. Which makes me wonder if it might see some construction play. It's a possibility. I don't think so, absolutely, since we are still going to be in a very spot removal centric meta, so I do think this could easily get heavily countered for talking standard. But in limited, like constructed and sealed, I think this is a really good card. Plus, you get the stat boost with the undergrowth, so if you are focusing on filling your graveyard and such, getting the stat boost and the menace makes this card actually really, really, really good. So I think this is a card that people underrate at first because it doesn't look as exciting. A 4 mana 2 free is just eh. But I think that Into the Battlefield effect is something not to sneeze at. So keep your eye out on this. Next is the Hammer Dropper. A 4 mana, 2 in Boros, red and white, giant soldier. It's a 5/2, and it has Mentor. And it's also a common as well. So, as we mentioned before, Mentor basically amounts to when you attack with it and another creature, as long as the other creature has lower power, you can target that creature to give it a +1/+1 counter while it's attacking. So, overall, this is just a fine limited card. It'll be interesting to see if this sees constructed play along with the other card, which I think I'll go right off about it. The Barging Sergeant, 4 in a red, creature, Minotaur Soldier, haste, Mentor. It's pretty much the same vein. The problem that I have with these cards potentially is the toughness. The toughness kinda is what making me very potentially concerned about these cards play. Now, don't get me wrong. I think these are great limited cards. If you're going into an aggro red-white deck, these cards are just fine on the common slot. But I think in constructed, we have a lot of removal like Shock and Lightning Strike still in the format, and even stuff that will give creatures like -2, -2. So 2 toughness do kill these creatures off relatively quickly. And before people are like, well, wait, doesn't the Mentor trigger? Can't the Mentor trigger help prevent that? You gotta remember that people can cast their spells on the stack of your Mentor triggers, so yeah, it'll be interesting. I think these are like commons, so these are just basic showing of how the mechanic will work and such and interactions. I think they're fine in limited. Constructed, if a red-white aggro deck's a thing, these might be just good as a budget option, but I'm not totally 100% sold on these in standard constructed. Next is the Rosemane Centaur. It's a flea, green and a white, Selesnya, for a center soldier 4/4 with vigilance, and it has Convoke. As we mentioned before, Convoke basically amounts to that you can use your creatures to tap them for a mana of the spell and use the creatures themselves to cast a spell. Overall, it's just a fine common card. A 5 mana 4/4 does feel a little even with the vigilance, but you gotta keep in mind if you're in the Selesnya colors, you're probably going to cast this for lower cost of lands since you're probably going to be using your creatures, so you can tap, like, say, 2 tokens you generate, and then this becomes a free mana 4/4 vigilance, which is fine. It's the legitimate. This one is not as exciting for constructed play because it's more just a really great limited card. It's just a 4 mana 4/4 vigilance that you will probably play in limited if you are a creature centric deck design. It's fine. It's a 23rd card in draft, honestly. Now, next is and this one you're probably going to have to tilt your head sideways, but I'll try to read them off. We're actually getting a returning mechanic, which is the split cards. For those who don't know, split cards basically amounts to that you can cast either one element of the spell, or if you have enough mana, you can cast both instants of the spell. And these are both instants, so we have status, which is another returning fiend. Hybrid mana is back, so there's going to be some cards that will be able to cast with hybrid mana. When you see this symbol, basically it amounts to that you can either use a green or black mana to cast a spell. So status, instant spell. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains Death Touch until end of turn. And then we got statue, which is 2 in Grigari colors, to be an instant to destroy target artifact, creature, or enchantment. Honestly, well, one thing to say right off the bat, the art on this is pretty cool. Just seeing kind of like how it goes from the left and the right of what's happening. Really great art. And the card itself is actually really good. Like, status itself is really good. Statue, if you just are playing it late game, both of these are very effective cards at their effective mana costs. The one thing I'm concerned about this in Constructed is this. If you can either make a Jun or even you could just put this in a Rakdos style aggro deck and then give Goblin Chain Whirler Death Rattle. That's giving those type of players pretty much a 4-mana Wrath. That's one-sided. Chain Rattler. Goblin Chain Whirler. But yeah, overall though, this is just a great card. It's great to see this mechanic returning back for Guilds of Ravnica. The art is sweet. Each side of the card is really good. If you have 1 mana just to give it a creature as a combat trick, Death Touch is great. And even if you don't use this part of the spell, you can just feed it in the graveyard, saying using stuff like Serviel and such, and then just. Oh no, wait! Brain fart. You can't do that. I forgot. This is not like Amaket, where this has. You can't cast it in the graveyard. No. Pretty much, you can hold this in your hand, and if you use it as a combat trick, fine. If you use this as a way to just as a removal spell, that's fine as well. Also, keep in mind, even if you use the first and not able to use the second, we do have cards in Standard like Recollect and such to help bring stuff back from the graveyard, so overall, I think this card is pretty good. It's a good card for one, or if you cast the left or the right. I'm pretty much going on and on. It's a good card. Next is the Arboretum Elemental, I think is how they pronounce that. 10 mana, 7 and a green. Convoke. It's 7/5 with Hexproof. Great. Yeah, this card is good and limited. And could it see potential play in Constructed? Maybe. It's the problem with this card is that it is a hexproof creature that doesn't have ways of evasion, such as trample or flying. But it does have hexproof, which makes it really hard to remove, so I could see some Aura-style decks if Selesnya supports that archetype, at least in Standard, with all the Standard cards that are currently still in Standard with this set rotation. If an Aura deck exists, this card might just see play because there are some really hard to remove green creatures, such as the Vine Horsemare and such, the Green Horse and such. So, yeah, I think there's a potential of this card seeing play in Constructed. Not like 100% chance, but there's a possibility. Next is another Jumpstart card, which I am kinda split on. It is Direct Current, 1 and 2 red, for sorcery that deals 2 damage to any target. And it has Jumpstart, which means, yeah, you can cast this again if your graveyard, as long as you discard a card. Here's the thing that people need to keep in mind. I think this is legitimately just a draft card. This is a card that if you need a 23rd card and you feel like you need a burn spell to help finish off an opponent or do it as a combat trick, this card, if you're in this color, is legitimately fine. It's not great. It's not amazing. It's not like, oh, this card is amazing. This is going to give me so much beneficial advantage. No. This is just your typical common combat trick removal spell. It's nothing to write home about. I do like how they're being very cautious of the Jumpstart mechanic and not making very high powerful spells with Jumpstart. I'll give them credit on that, but it does make the card overall just kind of That's pretty much my opinion on this card. It's It's fine, but it is very underpowered for what type of burn spells we do see in Magic. Or some might see it overpowered because of the Jumpstart, but 50-50 on that opinion, honestly. Next up is the Healer's Hawk, which is a 1 white, 1/1 flying lifelink bird. Honestly, this is a card you're going to play in draft, and I would be surprised if it sees constructed play, but I've seen weirder cards played in constructed, so. But this is the epitome of a good draft card. It's a 1 mana, 1/1 flyer. If you need a flyer for 1 mana, if your archetype encourages aggro base, or even if you need just like healing for a recovery base mechanic, this is a fine card. It's nothing to write home about. It's just typically You play it if you need a 23rd card in your draft and it helps benefit your overall game plan with your deck. That's pretty much it. Next card is another Jumpstart card, which this one I like a lot more better than I like Direct Current, which is Radical Idea. One in a blue, instant, draw a card. That's it. And honestly, I like this card a lot more better than Direct Current. Because when you look at it, it's 4 mana, draw 2 cards, and discard a card. Which is just fine. It's not amazing, but it's fine. So pretty much for 2 mana at an instant, you will draw a card. And then from another instant, all you're doing is just essentially looting on your second instant of casting the spell. That's just fine, especially if you need to dig into your deck or you need to find a way to feed cards into your graveyard. Overall, I like this common a lot more than the burn spell. I think it's a lot more practical. I do think that there's some decks that might try this archetype with this. Overall, I don't say don't go crazy and stuff like 20, like, well, okay, let's be realistic. You're not going to get 20 of these in a draft. Don't like stuff like 5 of these into a deck or something. I mean, even, I know, is it like to go crazy, but don't be that crazy. I would say putting like 2 to maybe 1 instance of this in your limited deck will be fine. It'll be interesting to see the constructed ramifications of this. Because it does feed Severe, potentially. Or, not Severe. It does feed, like, stuff like Undergrowth, and also does feed the 2-cost enchantment from Itzalon, the... I am having a brain fart on it. The Search for Azcanta, so that's something to consider. And it helps you dig into your deck. So, I like this a lot more compared to Direct Current, but we'll see its applications in the meta, if there is any applications. Next is actually one of the more cooler cards they revealed, which is the Murmuring Mystic. 3 in a blue, human wizard, uncommon. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 blue bird illusion creature token with flying. And it's a 1/5. Honestly, if you are playing kind of like a blue, maybe even splash of another color, kind of like stalling control deck that tries to win through token generation or just going in, this is actually a really good card. You can help stall. I don't think this is an amazing limited card. I think people are going to get into best case mentality and think like, oh, I'm going to stuff like 10 instant sorcery spells and then get a lot of bird tokens. No, in limited, that's probably not going to be as practical because in limited, usually you want to stick like about 5 instant or sorcery spells. And you have to first draw this and play this and then cast instant sorcery spells. So you got to keep that in mind. The timing is not going to be best case mentality with this card. However, I do think this card is just practically just a really good defensive creature. It's a 4 mana 1/5 that you can use to block against some of the more aggressive cards in the meta. It sticks, and anytime you can cast a control spell or cast any instant sorcery, you create a token that you can either use to go in for damage or just even use as an additional blocker as well. I like this card. I think this might have a chance of constructed play. I'm not going to go out on it yet until I go to the set review. But I do like the design of this card. I like how it's essentially every time you cast an instant, you create this bird. Plus the art on it is just like really cool. Just seeing this guy walking around with the birds and a little mystical bird singing on his head. It's both kind of mesmerizing and kind of adorable at the same time. The last card that I'm going to have to... Oh, no. Second to last card. The other card they revealed, and technically revealed because we'll probably see all the other ones eventually, they did reveal that gates are coming back, which obviously means with booster packs, what we're going to probably get is like with every pack's going to have a gate, and then your shock land is going to replace a gate, if I have to make a logical guess of what's going to happen. Now, guild gates are just typically draft fodder. You use these if you are going into a specific color pie and you need the filter for either that second color or if you're going into a third color deck and such and you need to get a way to splash the third color. Overall, great in draft and sealed. Not as amazing in constructed, though I do see some people who will play at least 1 or 2 tap lands because the temple loss is not that significant. There's some where the temple loss is significant, so keep that in mind. But overall, fine sealed and draft card, but constructed, probably won't see as much play, and even then, you got options, is what I'm saying. Okay, now let's see if I can dig. There's the one. Here's the one that we actually just got kind of revealed a while back that I wasn't able to read, but now that we actually got the art for it, I can actually read it. It's red and a blue, Fire Minds Research. It's a 2-cost enchantment, and it says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a charge counter on Fire Minds Research. Now you can spend 1 in a blue to remove 2 charge counters from Fire Minds Research, which allows you to draw a card. 1 in a red, remove 5 charge counters from Fire Minds Research. It deals 5 damage to any target. I don't know. This is legitimately, I'm going to have to wait for the whole set to be revealed to see if a Izzet type of spells matter deck works. And even then, I think the main weakness of this card is that it's slow. It is a really slow card. You have to first cast it and do nothing. You have to cast instant sorcery spells, which you would probably going to do in a game of Magic, don't get me wrong, and then put the charge counters on it. And then you're going to have to spend mana to activate these abilities. I mean, I like it in a sense that it's kind of like an investment kind of scenario, how you're investing by doing stuff you would do in Magic to get, hopefully, a late game benefit. Which I think in Limited, this card will just be the epiphany of fine. I don't think it's that great because, like I mentioned before, in Limited, you're probably going to have at least 5 to sometimes at most 8 instant sorcery spells. So when you look at this as a 2 mana, you're either going to use, if you even able to cast the spells after before you cast this, because this is the epiphany of a card that is great when you draw it early, but not great when you draw it late. Yeah, honestly, I think the best application for this card is in Commander, and even in Brawl. I think Brawl is going to have a lot of Izzet style, or, people using the Brawl decks to fight for their guilds, like Izzet, Selesnya, Boros, etc., etc. And I think this is a card that's perfect for a Brawl deck, because if you're going into an Izzet style Brawl deck, you're going to put a lot of instant sorcery spells. Putting this in is just a good investment. But you gotta keep in mind that even when you invest so much into it, you could lose all that investment with enchantment removal, which in the constructed meta, we have a lot. So, I'm not totally amazed by this card. I do see its application, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot more cons to the card than pros, let me put it like that. Overall, that's all the cards that catch up with that have been revealed as of September 4th. So, pretty much what I'm going to do is for the rest of the spoiler season, try to get over these cards, and then also try to work on a set reviews for these cards. So, yeah, I think that's my 2 cents on these cards overall. They're not bad. They're not... Some of them are really good. Some of them are just kind of... But overall, it is nice to see kind of like how the set is kind of building up from some of these cards we've seen so far. That's all I got for now. I hope you all have a lovely day. This is LevDev, signing out.